Hello and welcome to Crypto Interviews. My name is Claudio and this is Parachain, the channel where I do crypto news, reviews, tutorials, and interviews. And joining me today is Vivek, who's one of the co-founders of Polkadex, which is the decentralized exchange that's in development. And at the moment, it's going to be on Substrate, the only one with an order book on Substrate. So I'm super hyped about that. So Vivek is here to share as much information as possible. Of course, he's going to answer a lot of my questions because this is kind of an AMA. And again, this will be a premiere, so I will be in the live chat. If you have any kind of questions, just fire them away there, and we'll try and get them answered, of course, on the live. Vivek, thank you for joining. And if you could please just tell us a little bit about yourself and when did you first get involved in crypto? Because I'm curious to hear your backstory.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting, by the way. So I'm really happy to be here representing Polkadex. So I'm Vivek, I'm the Executive Director for Polkadex. And my journey with crypto began in 2013. I'm basically a systems engineer. I was into IT consulting for close to 15 years. And it was an accidental encounter with Bitcoin. I came across this blog, this forum, Bitcoin Talk. So that's when I first got my hands into what's going on there. And I used to very curiously try to understand what's, as an engineer, because I was natively curious about the Bitcoin and the white paper, and people are trading it. Even back then, it was about $100 back then. And to try my hands on, I tried to acquire a few 44 gigahash, mining rig and set it up and just trying to see how it all worked. And that was the first step to the crypto, world. And since then, I've been keeping very keen interest. It was never possible to mine anymore in a couple 6 months' time. It was like completely out of your realm. And then I've been following the entire space, and then this particular problem that we are dealing with right now has been there for a long time. It's if you go back to the 2013 and 14, whenever you have to have a transaction with Bitcoin to purchase something, or you have to interact with another person who's paying you in Bitcoin, and you have to send him something, you had to have somebody in between. So there was a escrow service in Bitcoin Talk back then, and there were some very known admins and moderators who used to be the escrow providers, and they took a small cut for the transaction. So
you first got involved by mining Bitcoin, right?
Obviously, to try it out, yes. Yep.
Wow, that's cool.
I have a picture of my mining rig in 2013. It's a small one. You can keep it in the corner of the room. Yeah. So it was like you had to connect it, parallelly. You could have some PVC pipes and just connect it parallelly and just connect it to the pool, and you could just you could see it was something I set up in the office as a hobby, but people didn't understand what it was back then. Right? Yeah. It was fairly new industry, and people couldn't actually get their wraps around Bitcoin, what it is, And even then, it had a very bad reputation in terms of, the whole crypto belongs to criminals. They use it for buying things in the black market. So it was essentially something that we, as a engineer myself, and since I had my own business, I was not really prepared to go full out and doing something in it, because I was not really sure whether, especially sitting in India 7 years ago, it was kind of risky for me to get involved in any way. So yeah. I just, shelved it as a hobby, nothing more than that. So that's how it began. Yes.
That's interesting. And what about
coming back to the.
And what about Polkadex?
Yeah.
How did you come up with the idea of Polkadex, and what made you decide to start up this project or this company?
Right. So the problem with Polkadex is what I was coming to. So there was this problem with different assets from interacting each other trustlessly was impossible right from the beginning, isn't it? We had so many crypto assets even before, and people were trying to actually transfer these assets without a third party. And that's when a new crop of exchanges came in called decentralized exchanges, where you had this collateral-based blocking of assets in the smart contract. And one of the earliest projects was BitShares. So BitShares was very fascinating at that time because it came in, I think, almost the same time as Ethereum, right? So it could claim 3-second block time, and you could collateralize BitShares for an equivalent amount of assets. Whatever asset you wanted to create, you just had to collateralize BitShares, and you could just use it on this platform. So that's the first time I could see that, okay, this is a problem which has already been tackled, but at the same time, it was really not getting mainstream in the sense that regular traders do not prefer to go to BitShares because even with 3-second block time, it wasn't really fast enough for them to make any profit. So, and many of the good exchanges that were built on top of BitShares was eventually called out by the regulators. Best example would be, I think Open Ledger was one of them. And there was something called Crypto Bridge. There was another one. They were doing fairly well, but once the volume picked up, they simply couldn't stand the, regulatory pressure. They would probably be getting notices about, the assets that have been traded there. So it just died out. So that's what happened with the earliest, people could actually drive some volume to the DEX market. So even I tried to do it. I tried to see if we could attempt the same thing that we are trying with Polkadot on BitShares by creating vested wallets, where you basically borrow the asset from the traders for a fixed amount of time. So you could have an off-chain auto matching engine, which will essentially provide the same kind of experience that you can see in a centralized exchange. So it didn't work out because there were so many hindrances to interacting with the gateway, because gateway was essentially centralized in BitShares, where you had to work with these gateway providers who issued these assets. So that was really, for a startup, it was really the charges they had was really prohibitive. So without getting native assets, you had to borrow these assets from these people to actually create your own. So you're essentially just creating a front end, not really in control of the assets. So if something gets hacked for this particular gateway, which is centralized, your interface and your reputation is again affected, right? Yeah. So it didn't work. It just didn't kick off. But it was a futile effort, but at the same time, I learned a lot of things. It just didn't work with BitShares. And I think in 2019 was when I came to meet Gautam and Dipansh. They were working on a consensus algorithm. It was mostly about scaling throughput on distributed network. So they had this really fascinating idea of not going with the block time. They were relying on vector clocks for confirming the transactions. So order of transactions was based on the time at which it was logged. So I used to keep in touch with them, and I think only early 2020 that I really started working with them. And in fact, I shared my thoughts about what is the problem with the taxes, and immediately I think Gautam was really interested, and he proposed to look at Substrate and Polkadot as an ecosystem to try and build a DEX which will be able to meet some of these things that we had in mind. So I think that's when it all started, the whole idea of building it on Substrate. And it was never an opportunity-seeking kind of attempt. We never thought that, okay, Polkadot would be so hyped up by this time. At that point, it was really about, that the entire Substrate framework and how it operated was perfectly fitting with what we wanted to build. That's how we started off with this.
Wow, interesting. So are you both Rust developers by trade? Like, did you used to work with Rust before, or did you have to learn on the fly?
Not really. Okay. I used to be a C++ programmer, so and I didn't code for a long time because I was into running my own business. So, but as an engineer, I understood, how it functioned. So yeah. Initially, to start off with things, I had to, learn Rust to help out with reviewing the code. And so basically, all of the team, the people who start off with Rust, generally it's a fairly new language because everybody was familiar with Solidity, but suddenly you have something called Rust, so you have to learn it. So we just started learning and started doing it.
And it's very complex as well. One of my friends is a very good developer, he's a very good software engineer. And he told me that Rust can be very complex, but it's challenging at the same time. So if you enjoy programming, learning Rust is on the plus side, I could say, because then you'll be sought after on the market as a developer. Like if you have Rust experience, then you're going to do really well in the market.
Exactly. I think it's very difficult. That was the reason why we had to, do it all ourselves, because it was difficult to find Rust developers. First thing, I tried it myself, I just couldn't find anyone. So, but good thing about Rust is it's more of a better version of C++, right? So if you're really about unlearning and learning something new, it was easier to understand what it was trying to do, and it was easier to, especially with the memory management it was a better language in every way. So that's how we could manage that, yes. And don't get me wrong, Gautam is a brilliant developer. He picks up anything. He can just pick up. Literally, he hacked the whole Substrate, by himself. There was nobody to support, right? So he just went in and tried it, installing and learning by himself. So everything was self-taught for the whole thing.
Yeah, he had to read the documentation, get used to it, and so on.
Exactly.
Well, no, that's very good. Thank you for that. Actually, what I want to move on to is the topic that everyone is talking about, and this is staking, because we knew that we had to wait for staking to go live when Polkadex goes live, right around August or September of this year. However, I saw a recent tweet from today that staking is going to be supported on KuCoin in one of their pools within the exchange. And that's really good news.
Right.
Like, I'm really hyped to that, because everyone's talking about staking. Everyone wants to stake, right? And it also incentivizes people, right? I mean, you're going to be holding if you're staking, and then more people are incentivized to hold because they get those return on their investment. So what about staking on other pools? So, and we know that PDEX is trading on KuCoin at the moment. But what about other exchanges? Have you discussed with other exchanges to see if you can list on their pools as well, or even if they don't necessarily list PDEX for trading, but you'll be able to support staking on their platforms? And if yes, which exchanges, if you're allowed to say?
Well, I think listing on exchanges is always part of building more community, right? So it's always in the pipeline. We are speaking to some of I'm not picking their names, but we are speaking to almost all the leading exchanges, the top 5 exchanges already.
Yeah.
But if you look at the bigger picture, right, you are essentially issuing an ERC20 token. And our project is basically a Substrate-based project. Yeah. So unless the tokens become native, the control you have on these ERC20 token is limited in terms of its functionality, its utility, and velocity of the token, by the price itself, right? So any attempt that you do right now is essentially just trying to create some movement in the, the velocity of the token, but then you have to depend on third parties to actually do that for you, right? You have staking. There are people who have flash loans, and there are people who have all these different algorithms built in their chain. But we didn't want to risk too much of that, and if to rely on the other teams to actually increase the velocity of our token, we would rather wait and have it issued in our mainnet before we have, because that's completely in our control, right? Yeah. It doesn't affect in any way. But if imagine if some of them are security compromised, our community is affected, right? So we also have to be careful. But at the same time, exchange listing is something which is happening right now. We are talking to these exchanges, but it will just go one by one.
Yeah, and the thing is with these exchanges is that there's usually a listing waiting queue, no? And you need to wait for them to announce it. Aside from the fact that you need to pay a specific fee, and you need to, right, because they do charge that in a number of tokens, right? I guess some of these exchanges ask you for a number of tokens to kick off trading.
Exactly. So they have a marketing fee, which goes with promoting your token and building the community, the initial community to engage in trading. So that's anyway for granted. But again, it's also about where you're trying to list, right? It's not only about having, say, 5 exchanges out of China, right? And 5 exchanges out of Europe. You have to distribute it properly. So that's another thing that we have in mind. We want to get it, go very aggressive and list everywhere possible, right? It doesn't make sense. So it needs to be, it should actually add value to the whole ecosystem. That's what we are more concerned about than simply just listing for some kind of hyping, and there's no point.
No, I totally agree. And just on that point with the Substrate version, so will Polkadex actually be integrated as a wallet within Polkadot.js, so as a live network under Polkadot.js, so that people will be able to hold those PDEX on the Substrate version within the wallet, right? Together with anything else on
Absolutely. That's
Polkadot.
how it should work. That is how it's supposed to work.
Perfect.
Whatever you're seeing right now in MetaMask is only because we have the token in Ethereum.
Because it's on Ethereum, exactly. Yeah. No, it makes sense.
So everything gets changed to the Polkadot.js wallet. And I don't know if people who've joined back in September, they've already seen how it works. And I have a live demonstration of how the first rudimentary version of the testnet working in YouTube. It's a very short video where I've seen how you attach it to the Polkadot.js wallet. And we also had this testnet listed in this,
Yeah, I remember that when I first, when I first reviewed Polkadex, actually, when I did the first review and I started to look into it, I was actually playing around with that DEX, but unfortunately the functionality was limited. So I was able to connect with my Polkadot.js wallet with the browser-based extension, but I wasn't able to perform any kind of test trades at the time because a lot of the buttons are disabled and not functioning. But I got a feel of what the page is going to be like, and it looks awesome. Like even just the sample page that you had there is still great.
Right. You could still trade. I mean, if you had the testnet tokens, we did issue it to a few of the members who came in first. We could issue them, and they were able to trade. They were able to see how it worked. But it was simply that's what we had. Two versions of testnet already. So some people who come now, they may be wondering, where's the testnet? They've been developing for like 6 months now. Where is this thing? So there's a purpose to the testnet, right? You're actually rolling out a testnet to actually see whether the original goals of building this product is achieved or not.
Yeah.
So the first version of the testnet was simply for just load testing the Wave grandpa consensus to see how much of load it could take. So we were simply simulating trades from one of the largest exchanges and seeing how much it could go without any optimization, right? And then we went for the optimization, and that is part of the Open Grants program. Like it was optimizing the trading engine. So we wanted to see how much longer, how much transactions it could handle per second. So the first version was very, very rudimentary, like it could barely reach about 150, 200. And then after the optimization, we opened it up to the public. We wanted to see if people could also trade together with this simulation, right? And that was the second version. It came out in February. First one came out in, I think, December beginning, just before our fundraise. Yeah. And second one was in February. And February version is what I think you can see in the YouTube channel. What I have, we have a test run on that. So it wasn't going beyond 300 TPS with all of the complex executions you require for auto matching and the numbers that you see for benchmarking Substrate. People say about 1,000 plus and all that is purely for balance transfer. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to complex auto matching and bigger orders, it's not holding beyond 300, 400 is the best we could come up with. So it wasn't really, an exciting time. The results were out, and then we had to do something about it because that is really not going to help, the progression of what we wanted to do from the beginning, right? You could just maybe create something in Polkadot, but it could be better than either Delta, but it's not taking us anywhere, right? It simply doesn't make the exact experience that we wanted to give for the users. Yeah. So that's why we thought, okay, we had to do something. We pivoted and we had this R&D going on parallelly about how to make it happen. And that's when we had a lot of discussions with market makers and trading bot companies. And they said, fine, guys, and if it's not anything below 20 milliseconds, this is not going to work.
Yeah, no,
so
for sure.
That was the moment of realization for them. Gautam said, okay, we have to change this. And that's when we moved on to Substrate, and we started looking at how the enclaves operate and how we can execute it trustlessly, and even still have a non-custodial operator to handle these trades.
No, absolutely. No,
that's how we came up with the new architecture. So essentially, the project is only like 4 weeks old now, or 4 to 5 weeks old, because the entire code that is written new is just 4 weeks old. So you had to scrap the on-chain order book earlier and had to come up with this new architecture. So that's why it got delayed. It's not a delay, because essentially if you want to create something cool, you have to give it time. You can't simply do whatever you want and just say, okay, we have.
Yeah, you can't do something overnight.
DEX.
It takes time.
Yeah, I mean, because if you had to create a DEX, we could have done it with the same order book engine and the on-chain order book. It was fine. It would have been ready by now. But it would have been another improved version of either Delta. Exactly that.
Yeah. And you want
That's not good
to
enough.
step ahead. Now, thank you for that. Let's actually talk about the next topic here, and this is regarding the IDOs, which is a topic that's been discussed quite heavily because we've seen the hype with Polkastarter, right? When they came up with the platform, you had to hold a certain number of polls, but at the same time, with polls being so expensive, it's just not really fair for the average investor who wants to get whitelisted and take part in an IDO. So my question is for Polkadex, how are you going to manage that IDO part? Like, will investors who are interested in taking part in an IDO need to hold PDEX? And if so, is there a certain amount they need to hold? Do you know that amount right now, or is that something that you're going to be planning? And also for the companies who want to launch, like hold a token sale on the platform, will they need to hold PDEX?
Okay, so when you try to solve a problem, you have to really go to the fundamentals, right? So whatever you're speaking about is the economics of it, which will effectively come from the fundamentals, right? What are we trying to build? That will reflect how much the user is actually going to pay. I think the first challenge here is to make sure that the IDO process itself, A to Z, is able to operate completely on-chain. Right now, I don't think any IDO platform is doing that because we went through this process. We underwent through this, we listed it in, I'm not saying specifically, but the thing is, we could see that many of these processes still manual.
Yeah,
the whitelisting process and sending out the details, and it is like, holy crap, I don't believe it. Because if you make a small mistake with the list that you upload and you end up paying like $20,000 in gas fees, you make a mistake, you pay another 20,000 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous, right? I mean, you can automate these things. And I don't think it's not fair to have, or fair to put the entire blame on Ethereum, end of the day. But there are so many things that should be automated and should be made fully on-chain, which can help a lot of projects to raise funds and not having to go through all this,
documentation,
trouble of having to documentation, then you have to audit them. The same code. I mean, essentially, anybody who's trying to maybe list it on ERC20 is probably doing it as a standalone option, basically a first option to list their token, and then they want to probably move it to their own chain, right?
Yeah.
So the same process is being repeated, and it's so hard or difficult to find good firms that audit your code. And there's a big, I'm not saying prohibitive, but if you want to do it properly, if you want to do a double audit or something, it just burns a lot of money, especially for a startup. If they're not raised funds to begin with, it's very prohibitive for a small startup. So these are things that can be resolved. And also, I don't think anybody has actually done the on-chain platform in Substrate, because Substrate is more, we always believe it's more efficient than, if you try to build something on top of it, it's more efficient and fast. And especially with the gas fees is completely can be taken out. Yeah. So I think that is a fundamental problem you have to solve. You need to make it completely on-chain and make these transactions, extremely inexpensive.
Yeah. And
then you can look at the economics of how to enable participation. So that is part of the, economics, like how to price this now. So you can have people come with, you have to have participation on the network with some utility on the token. So you simply cannot allow someone to just come in, because they can abuse the network, right? If you don't allow them to hold some amount of token. But the problem now is when the token price goes up, naturally the entry becomes prohibitive, right? If PDEX is trading at probably I don't know, I'm not saying, but still whatever number you fix now, it's again going to be expensive for a newcomer or a new trader who wants to actually participate, right? So that's where we want to try and make that a change by coming up with some logic to make sure that it's either priced against, the value that is locked should be linked to something else. And it's not decided yet, but that will be taken care of. Yeah.
So the plan,
to make sure that it is fair, to make it fair to everyone who participate.
Right. So the plan is to somehow lock up PDEX for both the platform who wants to run a token sale and for the person who wants to partake in the token sale in order to get those tokens, right? They'll both need to have PDEX and they'll need to lock those PDEX somewhere.
Anybody who's going to participate will need to have PDEX because that is essential for the network to be safe, right? Yeah. But how much and how long and whether we should burn it, it's part of economics. Yeah. So once you have the technology built, the economics is a different level because we have very good people advising us. I think it's a matter of, sitting with them and coming up with that.
And discussing that. Okay, yeah. Now that makes sense.
Work around
it's kind of following like a crowd sale approach with Polkadot, isn't it? If you think about it, because
exactly
that's your idea here, right? That makes sense to me. And then
you want to make it completely on chain, and where it should be like in single click, they should be able to deploy their token and deploy their smart contract and deploy their, and their code will be already audited, so they can just, issue tokens on the fly.
No, that's very good. Very good. Thank you for that. No, and it makes sense as well, because that's the whole purpose of automating the whole process. Now, let's talk a bit about the transaction fees. So I know there was an announcement a while back with Polkadex having 0% transaction fees. Now, what exactly do you mean by that? Because if we're going to have, for example, an order book with, say, Kusama trading against DOT, you're going to need to pay some transaction fees. So how can you completely get rid of those transaction fees? Like, what is your idea? Because you've mentioned that PDEX's utility is going to play a role in that. So again, do you need to lock up that PDEX somewhere, or how does that work?
No, see, there are two types of fees in the the system. One is the network fees. Network fees is the fees that is needed to secure the network. That's one thing. And then you have the trading fees. So transaction fee is essentially the network fees, the fees that is, so every time we refer to transaction fees, it's all about the participatory fees where anybody has to pay for sending a transaction on the Polkadex network.
Okay.
So because Polkadot is a parent network or a relay chain, which is helping these chains to offload their security, there is really no need to actually have very high gas fees to run this. That's why, many of these projects are coming up with very low fee in Polkadot. In other DEXs, if you look at it, there are so many swap-based DEXs up there. They are promising very low fee because they're going to be aspiring to be parachains. And once you have a parachain, your security is offloaded to the Polkadot main network. So that's just the start of things. But there's another side to this, right? Because if you look at the front-running aspect of the swap pools, right, especially with Uniswap, even if you tie it up with a very small fee, the front-running bots will drive up the price any day. So if you look at the trading chart of any new project, you can see a big spike and then just dumps. So a lot of people lose money, and the same thing happens over and over again. And that is something we can change by separating the confirmation of transactions away from the gas fees. So it's very much possible in Substrate. And, when Gautam said about this idea, I was really very impressed because it's something possible from the governance palette in Substrate, where you could actually separate this transaction queue from the gas fees. That's why we were able to offer this feeless swaps, So if you're able to do that, then you can avoid this, front-running problem, at least with gas fees being a problem. So that's one thing. And the order book side, it is definitely we need to have a trading fees. So that is separate. So trading fees is basically you need to have a sustainability plan for the network. You cannot keep running a product simply by having simply by using the locked tokens in the treasury or expecting that the price of the tokens will take care of itself. So that's why we wanted to have some sort of a trading fees involved to help keep upgrading the product, because this is more than a protocol, right? So Polkadex is not only a protocol, there's a product on top of it. There's an application on top of it. So if you need to create and sustain that, efficiently over a period of time, you need to create a sustainable model on top of it, where there's revenue to keep upgrading the mobile apps and upgrading the interface, upgrading everything, whatever comes with it. It's like it's like you're building a car. Like you have to have, because user experience is very subjective. You have
I agree. Totally.
Changing based on the time and how people interact with the systems. So that's why we have this small trading fees. It's very flexible. We'll probably announce it at the time of launch.
So the idea is that there will be some small trading fees, but if you hold PDEX, you can take advantage of a 0% trading fee, no? Or
yeah, that's right. If you have PDEX, then you don't have transaction fees or the network fees.
Do you have to actually hold PDEX, or does it take a portion of your PDEX for those transaction fees?
No, I think it will be refunded back. Once the transaction confirms, it is refunded back to the user.
Okay, that's so you need to hold it in your wallet, basically.
Exactly, just hold a small number of tokens.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Thank you for confirming that, because I had that doubt in my mind as well, and maybe other people in the community had the same question, so it's better to clarify that, and hopefully they'll get an answer to that. Now, to move on to the next topic, which is the Kusama Parachain auctions. As you can imagine, there's a lot of hype with that now, with Polkadot Decoded coming up. So my question is, do Polkadex plan to launch a Parachain on Kusama, or is that out of the question? You're only going to focus on Polkadot?
No, I think we are going to be doing it on Kusama, because that will be the best logical step. First go to Kusama, and then then take the next step to Polkadot.
So when you say you're going to go to Kusama, you actually mean it's going to happen in August, no? When you initially plan to launch?
Yes, that's right. First, once the code is audited and ready, we can go for the next step. Yeah.
Cool. No, that's good. Thank you. Now let's talk about the trading pairs, because I was saying to you earlier that let's say, for example, you may have DOT versus KSM, and this is of course on Substrate. But how are you going to manage? Because I know Polkadot is also going to support Ethereum. So how are you going to manage, say, a token on the Ethereum blockchain versus a token on Substrate? Will they be tradable between each other, or will they have different tabs within the DEX for each blockchain individually?
No, I think the user, for the trader, he will not know anything. He'll just simply see that all the tokens are traded among each other. Because once these tokens are in the chain, in the Polkadex chain, it is just like a native Substrate chain.
Okay.
Sorry, a Substrate-based token. So even if an ERC20 token is deposited into our Polkadex chain, it can be traded against another a token issued in Substrate. There is no difference.
Wow.
So the user will not know the difference between trading between an ERC20 token and a Substrate token. So everything will be seamless for him. Only thing is, when he wants to take it back to the native chain, there will be a one-click hop back to Ethereum, and there will be that's the only change where he will have to undo. Otherwise, he can leave it there. He can leave it in the same Polkadot.js wallet, where it will remain a native Substrate token, even though it has been bridged through chain bridge. So it will be completely seamless for him. He doesn't have to worry about, for ERC20 there's another tab, or for Substrate there's another tab. They're interchangeable. They can trade each other.
I was going to ask that now. So how are you going to manage that part? Because we know that there are bridges on Polkadot and on Kusama, which are managing native blockchain tokens to be migrated across. Like you've got Darwinia, you've got ChainX, you've got Polka BTC,
right? So
many RAN. So are you going to need to use one of these bridges to connect someone's MetaMask wallet with ERC20 tokens and then transform them into a Substrate version token? Or how are you going to manage that? Because like you said, it's seamless for the user. So the user is going to use MetaMask, right? To connect to Polkadex.
That's right. They want to transfer an ERC20 token. They'll have to transfer it to an address that we provide using whatever Ethereum wallet they're using, and it will be integrated to the system.
Okay. So will there be like a swap functionality within, or a conversion?
Yeah, there will be a bridge. Yeah, there will be a bridge. We are right now starting off with chain bridge. So you send a token from Ethereum and it ends up in a Substrate address.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, that would be the most ideal scenario because, like you said, it would be
Right.
safe for the user, so the user shouldn't have to worry about
That's right.
which blockchain it's on. Cool. No, that's
Correct.
great. Thank you for that. Now, to move on to the next topic, which is with regards to partnerships. So, are you in discussion with any other projects within the Polkadot ecosystem? Because we've seen Akala Network are partnering with everyone. Like Moonbeam is one that's been talked about quite a lot because they're working with smart contracts and they're making smart contracts portable over to Polkadot or to Substrate from Ethereum. So, are you in talks with any of these other projects, and do you plan to work together? If so, which ones?
I think we're in talks with most of them, actually, because we have at least internal interactions going on with many of these projects that you spoke about. Only thing is it hasn't matured into a level where you go out and say, hey, we are going to partner with something. Because when you announce a partnership, there has to be a synergy, right? You have to be using something that they offer, and we are probably exchanging each other some value that we generate, right, internally. So it hasn't matured to that level, but we're definitely in talks with most of these projects. And we're trying to see how we can work together because it's the same ecosystem. And it is very important that we share our work to create products that are going to solve these problems, right? Because we are really thankful to other teams who have created these technologies, right? It's not like we invented everything. Not at all. We're just putting together the pieces, correct? But it's not easy to put together the pieces without the help from the people who actually, came up with it, the idea, original ideas. So it takes a different idea to stitch it together to something very useful. So if you take a smartphone, all of these technologies were there since 1970s, but it took, Steve Jobs to do it, right? Because it takes time for these things to be put together into something useful. So that's why it's very important that, every project is able to share their know-how with each other so that they're able to leverage their ideas and focus on the problems they are solving. So we are in touch with most of these projects, but from an announcement, like a partnership announcement, the only ones we have announced so far is obviously Kilt for the social KYC, which they have come up with that.
Yeah.
And then we have the Substrate, that's another one, which is the trusted enclave, the abstraction layer for SGX. Built for Substrate, and we are working with Supercomputer System for that, and that is a known partnership. So these are the two main core components of team that are already we have announced it for. And moving on, we'll definitely be trying to work with the other teams because the sole purpose of building a DEX for the ecosystem is to have to make it easier for projects to list their tokens and do not have to go through this n number of iterations and going behind n number of people to get them visibility, right? To get listed and to get the IDO done and the IEO. It's a very painful process for a startup if you look at it, and you don't know who you're talking to. There's so many people taking advantage of you, So it's definitely going to be first offered to people who are building on Substrate and helping them to onboard their tokens and get listed very fast and try to maybe raise funds for themselves or do something like that.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much for that. That was good. And yeah, that was pretty much it from my side. All of these questions, I didn't have anything else to add, but I just do want to ask one final question is what do you have to share for the community? Anything excited that you want to share? Any kind of update that you think is worth sharing and the community should be hyped about?
I think every week from now, I think we have at least one event happening. It's in the pipeline. So I would rather not kill the surprise. I would rather let it happen through the official channel. Wow. So first one is, of course, the KuCoin staking. That's just announced. And next week we have another one coming up. And the week after,
Binance. Say it. It's Binance. I know it is.
No.
Just joking.
Never. I mean, I'm not supposed. I think there's a whole a pipeline of events that we are trying to work with to make sure that we are able to keep the community together, because it's very important for a project like ours to have a good community to support and test our product when the testnet is released. It's a very important, and also getting the feedback, the right feedback, right? Not just about, speculation and price hype.
Yeah.
It's about building. We're trying to build something that is useful for people, right? So it has to be done so feedback is very important. So community-wise, yes, we are putting a lot of effort to keep it going. So that I can for sure every week, at least one event will be coming up.
And of course,
probably by then the testnet will be up. Yeah. So maybe in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, the testnet will be ready. So yeah, so people can see what we're doing.
And of course, Polkadot decoded too, right? Because that's.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's going to be nice. If you, I really encourage everyone to come and listen to it, because there's a lot of people who still don't know what we're doing, right? It's still Greek and Latin to most people, like what we're building, and feel like, it's very speculative, but it's not really speculative. You just go through the architecture and listen to what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve. There could be several different schools of thought on how it should have been done, but we strongly believe in what we're doing, and we think there's a very huge use case in creating a non-custodial exchange with a high-frequency trading. I think there's a lot of people waiting for something like that to come.
No, absolutely agree. Cool. That's it. And thank you very, very much for joining and for sharing your thoughts and for answering all these questions. I hope the community is also going to enjoy it. As always, in the live chat or in the comments below the video, let me know what you think. And of course, you can find links to Polkadex and also to Polkadex's Telegram group, because that's where you're going to get a lot of help from their community members there, from the admins, if you have any questions, any doubts. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for joining, Vivek. And I hope to see you again soon when we have more updates. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thanks for keeping the support, and just keep let us know. We can always have a chat and just keep everybody updated. Always open to this kind of discussions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Take care. Have a good day.